Hi, I'm Joe Connolly of WCBS to introduce you to Randy Piers, president of the Chamber of Commerce in the fourth largest city in the country, Brooklyn, where apartments are now renting faster than in Manhattan. Randy Piers, I'll ask you the question you love to talk about, I'm sure. Why is Brooklyn growing so fast?
Well, I mean, Brooklyn's the center of the universe, of course, Joe. I mean, I don't know if you've heard, but seriously, Brooklyn has gone through this incredible transformation. It's taken us, almost 30 years, and a lot of it goes back to what I call the rebranding of Brooklyn. Quickly, the history here is that we were once an old manufacturing center for New York City. We're the fourth largest manufacturing center in the country after World War II, and we're producing battleships at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And then, like most industrial cities, we went in decline. Heavy manufacturing left, people left, they left to the suburbs. We had a lot of empty space, particularly industrial space. We became poorer as a place. Crime went up and things of that nature. But the good news was that we had one advantage over every other place in New York City, every other borough. People knew Brooklyn. They knew where Brooklyn was. It had a bad perception attached to it back then, but they didn't have to point it out on a map. So a lot of what we did almost 25, 30 years ago was we started to really see this transformation about who we are as a borough through a rebranding process, right? And simply put, what was once, for example, dangerous became edgy, and now it's hip, right? Like that's kind of how it played out. And now every millennial that I know wants to do a tour of duty here in Brooklyn. We are a younger borough statistically than the other boroughs. We've grown our residential community significantly because we've taken a lot of that old industrial space and we've converted it into residential. And people just love the live, work, and play vibe that we've got going here in Brooklyn.
What a great story you have to tell. What are the types of new businesses coming in?
So tech is our fastest growing sector, and people don't realize this, but we rival San Francisco in terms of new tech startups. But it's what I call little tech. It's not big tech. Big tech is the Googles and the Amazons and all the Facebooks that and some of those companies are based in Manhattan. Our new tech startups. We've got New Lab out at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. We've got NYU Tandon's Future Lab. We've actually tried to cultivate tech through these wonderful incubators. And tech is by far the fastest growing. A lot of that in northern Brooklyn, communities of like Williamsburg, for example, Bushwick is becoming a hotbed for tech firms. These are new tech startups. These are firms that some will make it, some won't. But tech is the fastest growing. Now, in terms of employment, healthcare is still our largest sector by far. So, we are the most populous borough. If you think about it, we've got almost 2.8 million people. And the more people you have, the more healthcare you need. And therefore, we've got, a significant driver of employment being the healthcare sector. But we've got a lot of things in between. Our restaurant scene and our hospitality scene has grown significantly. We've got more hotels than ever before in Brooklyn because we've got more tourists who make their way to Brooklyn than ever before. Before COVID, we had 62 million visitors to New York, 15 million made it to Brooklyn because they wanted to experience this amazing place that we call home. And with that, we've seen the growth in restaurants and tourism and hospitality and things of that nature. So there's a lot of great things happening with the economy. New York Times says we're leading the way out of COVID. From a statistical perspective, we were not overly reliant on office workers coming back, so we had an advantage coming out of COVID. These are some of the positive drivers with New York City, with Brooklyn's economy.
Here's Neil with a couple of questions. Producer Neil A. Caruso. Neil.
Thanks, Joe. Randy, good to see you again. So, told us about the best businesses, the fastest growing businesses in the borough. I'm curious though, what has surprised you about the pandemic recovery?
So it's been uneven. You can be in certain neighborhoods and things have slid backwards, and then in some communities we've bounced back quickly and we've come back stronger than ever. Overall, our real estate market, as I think Joe had mentioned, has bounced back. We've got rents are up again, and so is the cost of real estate and leasing, for example. But the reality is, you go to parts of southeastern Brooklyn. We're doing a lot of work. That's Brooklyn Tea. Brooklyn Tea is an amazing business, homegrown husband and wife business. We've got a lot of examples of that. But if you go to places like Southeast Brooklyn, we're still struggling. We had vacancy challenges prior to COVID, and that's gotten a little bit worse. And then you've got communities, particularly in northern and central Brooklyn, that are booming. Bed-Stuy is booming. Bed-Stuy has truly become the epicenter of the new Brooklyn economy. And the good news there is it stayed true to its character in terms of a lot of the new businesses that have started are owned and operated by entrepreneurs of color. And we've been very intentional about that, and and that's a good sign. I've done more ribbon cuttings in my career in the last 15 months than I've ever done before, and that's a good positive sign. But it's been uneven, Neil. Like I said, it depends where we're talking in terms of the geography. But Brooklyn overall has been better and stronger than any of the other boroughs.
What about jobs? What are the best paying jobs right now?
Well, tech by far. Business and professional services, which has grown. A lot of that driven by independent consultants, and solo entrepreneurs. So those are still, once again, in terms of numbers of jobs, they're not the highest, but in terms of the actual salaries, those are the areas that we've seen a lot of wage growth. By the way, overall though, and the New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli puts out a very good data snapshot on the boroughs, and he put out Brooklyn's recently. Median household income from 2010 to 2019, it grew the fastest in Brooklyn, 58.8%. Now, overall, our median income is still less than Manhattan, but we've grown the fastest. And that's a good positive sign. And a lot of that is driven by these new creative economy jobs in tech, for example, and in business and professional services.
Is there still a waiting list for businesses to get into the Brooklyn Navy Yard, Randy?
Yeah, they're pretty much, they've leased out. Actually, I was with their new president and CEO, Lindsay Green, yesterday. We hosted our energy summit at the Brooklyn Navy Yard at Dock 72. And, and she confirmed that. She's like, look, we're fully leased out. So if we're gonna create more space, we're gonna have to build up a little bit. And they've got some good ambitious projects, that are gonna come down the road. But yes. But it's not just, the Navy Yard anymore. It's Industry City, where I'm sitting right here. Brooklyn Chamber moved its offices to Industry City a year ago. 6 million square feet of former heavy industrial space, which has really, truly been converted into this creative epicenter for Brooklyn's economy. And for us, it was a great move because I walk out my door and I'm touching my members. Lilac Chocolates, Sahadi's, Stumpy's Hatchet House. We throw hatchets and we have happy hour. I mean, it's an incredible place. And then you've got tech firms here. You've got Porsche, I should say, and Volvo that just opened up showrooms here. You've got the Brooklyn Nets have their training facility here. You've got some biotech firms that have really come on the scene. Right across the street is South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, where we're going to produce wind turbines. Equinor, Norwegian-based company, is going to assemble these massive wind turbines so that they can be shipped out to the coast of Long Island and produce renewable energy. You've got Steiner Studios at Bush Terminal nearby that's going to open up, is building its second full-service film production studio. A lot of things happening here in Southwest Brooklyn, communities like Sunset Park.
I've never heard anybody describe this much business growth in one area. Once again, to go back, what happened? Did Manhattan just get too expensive, too congested? What beyond rebranding led to all these companies you're talking about?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Some of it is more recent, right? So COVID had a disproportionate impact on Manhattan. Office workers that have not yet even returned. I mean, the Partnership for New York City just did a recent study. Only 8% of office workers have come back full time. That's an extraordinary number. Think about that. And that hurts all the small businesses, for example, that rely on those workers coming back. The second thing is tourism. So tourism, we have this hiatus in terms of tourism, although tourism has bounced back quite nicely. and that impacted Manhattan more disproportionately. But the other thing is just that, yeah, pricing was one thing for sure, Joe, but just the vibe here in Brooklyn, it's live, work, and play. Whereas in Manhattan, it tended to be more, work and play. And when you have that mixed use character, and by the way, it's good. This is a good example, Joe. Our downtown Brooklyn, has shown amazing resiliency, through COVID, much more so than the financial district and Midtown, because it was already mixed use in character, right? Now, we didn't plan it that way. If you go back, 10 years ago, downtown Brooklyn rezoning was supposed to be so that we could become the back office mecca for a lot of the firms in Manhattan. But what played out was that we had a robust residential market that sprung up. We've got our own skyline now in downtown Brooklyn, but when COVID hit, we had a residential community that was already in place that helped sustain a lot of the businesses that were operating through the pandemic, a lot of the essential businesses in downtown Brooklyn. We had some anchor tenants too, like Trader Joe's, Target at City Point. So we actually were drawing people into our downtown, where the other downtowns, the ones in Manhattan, were like ghost towns. And so mixed use matters. I like to say this a lot, but mixed use matters. And it gives that sense of a true sort of holistic community. And I think that's part of the rebranding story. When people think about Brooklyn, they think about history, they think about live, work, play, they think about the vibe, and they think about, yeah, that's where I want to be because it's the future.
Yeah.
Interesting. Randy, are most jobs in Brooklyn hybrid now, and is that helping the local shops and restaurants?
Yeah. So ironically, yes. I mean, if you're working from home, you're going to be shopping. You're more likely to shop locally, right? And we are the most populous borough. So we have more people that are at home in their communities, and that helps our small businesses. So yes, the truth of that is yes. Look, I will say we need Manhattan to bounce back. We need office workers to come back if we're going to have a full recovery for New York City as a whole. So I say that with sort of these mixed emotions because it's good for Brooklyn in some cases, but we do need the city to bounce back. And there are three factors that are still very much challenges as we move forward that are impacting businesses across the board. The first is rent arrears, right? We've got about a third of our businesses that owe back rent, some form of back rent, some of it going back to 2020. And, we just lifted the evictions moratorium January 15th of this year. So we're working through this process of how are we going to reconcile these mostly small businesses that owe back rent. That's number one. Number two, we still have a soft labor market. It's bounced back somewhat in this last quarter, but we still have industries and sectors that can't get enough employees, restaurants and hospitality, in particular, early childhood education. We can't, and by the way, if we don't have enough childcare slots, then other people can't get back to work. So there are definitely still some challenges within the labor market. But the third thing is, we were facing supply chain shortages, and now some of those supply chain shortages are really impacting inflation, right? So this is going to be the sort of new challenge moving forward, how we're going to tackle inflation, what that's going to mean for our residential market, for example. But the supply chain issues, we were seeing that as early as late last year. I mean, everything from light bulbs and screws in our local hardware stores to luxury cars, and everything in between. And now we're starting to see the price pressures because of some of that.
Yeah, Randy,
Well,
real quick before we get back to Joe, and then we'll wrap up here. Let me ask you about inflation. Do you anticipate that impacting the labor market in Brooklyn?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to impact discretionary spending. And I think that will ultimately impact the labor market, right? And I would say that because, truthfully, we've got this strange little balancing that we're trying to sort of work on right now, where we weren't having enough people re-enter the labor market, although the people were here. And now we're going to have these price pressures pushing up, and people are going to be less inclined, for example, to want to spend. So it could certainly long term very much impact the labor market.
What'll happen with the 24-story tower being built in downtown Brooklyn? Will that be filled? What do you think will happen around there, Randy?
I'm cautiously optimistic. Like I said, our market has held up a lot better than other parts of the city, and I think our downtown has a very particular attraction. The Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, led by my friend Regina Meyer, has done an extraordinary job building this sense of community that extends beyond just the commercial space. It's the residential community, it's the retail sector, it's the restaurant. Gage and Tollner is back, and they're doing really, really well. There's just so much happening in our downtown, and I think if a company's choosing between Manhattan and Brooklyn, they're really seriously considering Brooklyn as the better alternative. Once again, I say it with a heavy heart sometimes, because I also don't want to see our friends in Manhattan suffer.
Yeah, that's a very proud summary that you give, and also realistic and balanced with the problems as well. And I just want to close with a shout out to some people. I do some programs sometimes with the Brooklyn Public Library, and they are great at helping businesses start up. You mentioned Brooklyn Tea. I think they actually came out of the Brooklyn Public Library incubator. So business owners, the Brooklyn Public Library, as well as the Chamber of Commerce, are two great places to start. And when you talk about the rebranding of Brooklyn, I remember years ago, the first one was great, was just in big bold letters, "Made in Brooklyn." That's all you had to say.
Right. Yeah, and listen, I'm made in Brooklyn too, and I got to tell you, I wouldn't have it any other way. It's been the most extraordinary life experience to grow up here, and that's why I love doing what I do, Joe and Neil, because this is truly an amazing place, and it's got so much richness, and hopefully more and more people will experience that moving forward.
And the tourists can get there by just walking across the bridge.
Mermaid Parade, by the way, I was at the Mermaid Parade this last weekend. We finally came back after 2 years, packed. They had the most entries in the Mermaid Parade than they ever had before. Like we are bouncing back. Things are bouncing back for sure.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Thanks, Randy. Good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.